Hey guys, so fantastic to be connecting with Silke all the way from Germany this afternoon, and really just wanting to chat through her photography, how she found the Masai Mara camp. She's been there once or twice, and then to have a look at some of the images that we've shared along the way. So how are you doing, Silke?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Nice to see you again.
It is great to catch up. So Silke, tell us a little bit, where is home for you and how did you get into photography in the first place?
Well, as I said, my home is Germany. I live in Bonn, which is it's our former capital. It's close to Cologne, so some people might know where it is. How I get into photography? Well, honestly, I was interested in photography for a while, but to be honest, to do it really a little bit more serious, I started five years ago. It actually began while I was doing a guiding course in Kenya in 2014 to get more knowledge about wildlife and how the animal behavior is and how to photograph them. And on this course, there was a guy from South Africa, and I don't know whom of Wild Eye he knows, but he introduced me to Wild Eye and he said, well, look at them. They have just recently building up a new company. Maybe that's something for you. So
So
I went on the
your
website and I figured out where you are and what you do. And my first trip was with you to Amboseli.
It's interesting because what you're saying there is, photography was almost a byproduct of a passion for the bush, which is something that so many of our guests have, which is really great because, there's times where you have fantastic photographic sightings, but there's also times where you don't. And both are equally enjoyable if you really appreciate wildlife as well. So having spent some time in Kenya then, and obviously our first trip together in Amboseli, I have fond memories of that. Going into the Masai Mara and then having found us and your first Mara experience in the Wild Eye Mara camp. Tell us a bit about that and what your thoughts were going into that ecosystem for the first time.
Well, honestly, I have been to the Mara before in 2010, but as a regular tourist, just spending 2 or 3 nights in one of these regular lodges.
I'm going to jump in there and just confirm 3 nights in the Mara. Is it enough?
And no, 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 no. That's the reason why, for my first trip to the Mara camp, I decided to go for 2 full weeks. So in 2016, decided to go into the Wild Eye camp, and I have been there for full 2 weeks, which was amazing, really amazing.
So maybe just on that, a lot of people will look at our packages. So we do 6 nights, 7 days, especially, for the Great Migration, you want to stack the odds in your favor and you want to give yourself as much of a chance as possible. For a lot of people, they'll look at that and say 6 nights, 7 days in one place. Now, you've just told us that you've done 2 weeks back to back. And it wasn't enough. You could have stayed longer. And obviously, you enjoy the bush. But for someone that thinks 6 nights and 7 days, is that too long? Maybe expand why it's really not.
Now, I think it's not too long because the Mara has so much more than just crossings. Although you are never sure that you see something. I remember the first trip we were really lucky. We had a couple of sightings and crossings. While the year after, in 2017, I think we had just had one or two. So as you said, it's increasing the chance of seeing the crossings, but there are so many other things to see. Apart from all the predators, lions and leopards, and there's so much birds, elephants, whatever. So for me, it's never too long to stay there for a week. I would always go for 2 weeks, but the problem is then I don't have time to do other things.
That's true. And it's also funny how much it can change in one week. I mean, if you think about, you can arrive and there won't be a wildebeest in sight in the middle of the migration. And 3 days later, you wake up and it's just wall to wall with wildebeest. So I think that's the beauty of it. 6 nights, 7 days, giving yourself the time to explore. And especially during the migration season, you've got to put a bit of time in to get lucky with the crossings. And obviously the location of the camp helps with that sort of thing. So first,
That's another reason why I like staying a little longer at one place, because it reduces travel time.
yeah.
And if you are limited with your vacation time and change too many locations, then you just waste time in traveling. So I would always go for rather 2 or 3 locations instead of 5 or 6, because it just gives you more time to explore.
Yeah, and I think the Mara is also, with 6 or 7 nights in our Mara camp, to combine and extend that. We often have guests going up to Samburu for 3 nights or across to Amboseli. Those direct flights are now back into play as well. So if anyone's thinking, 2 weeks is what they want to travel for, we've only got 6 or 7 nights covered. We can obviously make those arrangements and plan to do that. So Silke, your first time to the Mara camp in 2016, and you've been back a couple of times since then. And I would imagine that you've seen something different and some changes to the camp every single time since your initial visit.
Yeah,
the one thing that doesn't change is the staff.
Exactly, the staff is always the same, and that's the beauty of that camp, because it's more like a family, especially if you are coming back again and again. I think it was my 5th time this last year. So it's like visiting a family, and that's really, really lovely. But you can see a lot of changes. It's getting better and better every time. All these tiny little bits and pieces that makes the camp better and better. And there are always some surprises in. So there's no year where it's exactly the same. Not only that the vegetation changes and the sightings are changing, but also the camp and the camp activities are changing.
And I think, that's one of the great things. But just to explain to someone why, we're always talking about how special our camp is, and we talk about it being on the river, and people get there and they're like, oh, wow, you really are on the river. During COVID, the dreaded word, a couple of years ago, when we weren't able to run our camp, you were part of an intrepid group of explorers that went in the middle of COVID, and you got very lucky. But you were based at one of the larger lodges in the reserve. And just, talk maybe a bit about the difference in the experience and what makes the Wildeye Mara camp so special. Because we're always telling people why we believe it's so special. But what makes it special for you from that experience?
Definitely you feel connected with nature, because it's a tented camp, it's unfenced, you're next to the river, you can hear the hippos. You know that there also can be animals in the camp. Sometimes you have a hippo next to your tent chopping grass. And especially during that year when we have been there and stayed at the Serena Lodge, and we got connected with the crew in the camp during daytime. But especially at night, it's totally different, because you're disconnected. It's a lodge, and you are far away from the bush, so you can't hear the noises. Not that much. Sometimes you hear a hyena, but it's not the same as staying in a tented camp directly located to the river. And that's what it makes really, really, really special for me.
It's a huge part, yeah, to be able to hear the wildlife. And I think also, in a lodge environment, some of these camps, some of them will be 30, 40 different beds. So, that's a lot of people. It's a big place. The dining becomes a bit of a chaotic activity. But with just 12 guests, the smaller, intimate experience, there's less noise because there's fewer people. But yes, as you say, hippos right outside your tent. And the site that we are based at, I think, you and I have spent a lot of time traveling around Africa, but that has to be one of the busiest and noisiest sites in terms of animal activity that I've experienced anywhere in Africa.
Yeah, that's true. And as you said, if you are staying in a lodge, it's in most cases it's more crowded. There are more people, but you never learn anybody of them to know them as a person, because they are strangers and they remain strangers. While you go to the Mara camp and there are 12 people, even if they are travel as a couple, after this week you have made new friends. because you get connected during dinner time, and you exchange your images. You are together in the car, which you don't have if you are staying in a lodge. And that's not the fault of the lodge, but you usually go there with the group, and or with family, and you stick with your group. You never talk. You mostly don't talk to the others.
And I think that's a really good point. I mean, you as a single female traveler, you've come into that camp environment, and I know that you've made lasting connections because we've planned reunion trips. And I mean, you've got an entirely new network of friends with a common interest in photography. And that, I think that's also a benefit which maybe people aren't necessarily immediately aware of. So, I mean, for a single traveler who's thinking, okay, well, where do I go and to come along on this? Apart from the fact that we don't charge a single supplement, did you find it intimidating the first time? And what would you say to someone that is maybe listening to this and thinking, well, maybe I could do this if you can do it?
I would always recommend to do it. Because it's a smaller group. It's not like traveling with a large group of 30 or 40 people. So it's just a group of 12 people, and you get a connection. You have a group of people with whom you share the car. So for a single traveler, it's perfect. For me, it was perfect. And as you said, I made a lot of friends. I have a lot of connections now around the world. And I made connections with which remains. So I started traveling with the same people again and again. So we define the week when we come, and then we meet in the Mara.
Which is lovely, and it's always great to see people reconnecting and flying in from the States, from Switzerland, from the UK. And I think, for a lot of single travelers, the last thing they would want to do is be the third wheel and be the only single traveler, which is actually very seldom the case on our trips, because we don't charge an additional single supplement. So we really do cater to that single traveler side of things. Silke,
even if people are there with and traveling for example, as a couple or as a small group, as soon as it comes to lunchtime or dinner time, then it doesn't matter whether they are a couple. It's a long table. We are all sitting around, and then we are sharing experience across the table. It doesn't matter whether there is a single traveler or a couple or a group of friends. It's always a group.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And having the common interest and passion for wildlife, you generally get lovely people around the table, which is really cool. And you mentioned earlier, when you went to the Mara and our camp wasn't up, but our staff was still there. So part of the reason that we have the camp on the site is to have a presence in that area and to try and kind of not allow the wildebeest to cross at a very, very dangerous crossing point. So our staff were there, even though the camp wasn't running. And so you guys, whilst you were being hosted by Jimmy, I think, that was looking after you, was it Sammy? I can't recall.
It was Jimmy in the beginning, and then he got ill, and we shifted to Jackson.
Oh, okay, that's right. And so, you were out in the field with those guys every day, but, you were hanging around the crossing points, which are very close to camp, and they said to you, well, no, come through, come and join us for lunch, and, kill some downtime here. Don't worry about going all the way back to the lodge. And so, in the midst of COVID, there you are sitting around with the camp staff that you've known all these years and, just really enjoying it. And I think that speaks to the nature of the hospitality of the team that we have, and we're so fortunate to have in our camp.
That was really brilliant, because it's not only that we got invited for lunch or for breakfast, but we sat around the camp, we chatted. Of course, Mary always asks, "Where's your laundry?" That was basically our first question.
For everyone that doesn't know, Mary runs the housekeeping, and I've rocked up there with shoes that looked very dirty and old, and go out on drive. I come back and they've been cleaned and they look brand new again. And Mary just doesn't rest. She's always on the move and always making sure that everything is absolutely immaculate. So just got to be careful about what you leave lying around, because she will take it and clean it for you.
Exactly. And on the other hand, we met at the crossings. So since the camp was not up and running, and the crew was there just to protect the animals for crossing at that point, they also had a lot of time, and they joined us for the sightings. So we met for example, at Peninsula, and we enjoyed the crossing together. Dixon always came with this big pot of chai tea. Then we were there together and enjoyed nature, which they can't do if they have a full camp.
That's true. And just to put a bookend to that, just remind me again, how many crossings did you guys get?
Oh my goodness. we were there, I think, 11 or 12 days, and we had 20 or 21 crossings.
All right, enough about that, because now we're going to set expectations.
And one was really incredible because it lasts 2 hours, full 2 hours. That was crazy.
That really is unbelievable. Silke, what I thought we could do is, I asked you to share a selection of images with us before we talked, and just running through some of the favorite memories. And I know your initial response was only 10, and so somehow we've got 16, which is great. But I mean, you've been going there for a number of years now. The memories that you have, I often talk about photographic memory being a very different thing for photographers, because I'm pretty sure when you look at these images, there's a wealth of emotion and memories that come. You'll probably know who was with you, what had led up to that moment. So should we jump into them and go through them, and maybe you can just chat through some of the kind of stories behind this? I mean, this is an icon of the Mara.
That's an icon of the Mara, and that was the reason why I chose that image, because especially in the first year when I was there, when I spent this 2 weeks, I think you remember, Andrew, then when we met Scar, and he was heavily limping, and he was not in a good shape. So, and on that specific evening, we really thought it would be his last. And that was a quite emotional sighting. It was almost dark, it was raining, and we thought it would be his last evening because he was lying there. And I think he just made it because the girls and his brothers, they kept him alive and brought him food.
Yeah, I remember that evening very well, and it came rushing back to me when I had a look at this image. And this one, Silke?
That's from last year. That's when I was flipping through my images, I thought that at least my style slightly changes. Not that much as I would like to have it, but over the years I tried to take some different images, and I really like these plain and clean backgrounds. So that's one of the images I really like. It's very pure.
And I think it speaks to, there's another element of this. Obviously, I'm assuming that this has been taken more in the middle of the day, and perhaps I can just skip to the next one as well. And, these kind of scenes in the middle of the day, and a lot of people, they immediately dismiss being out in the field in the middle of the day and taking photographs in the middle of the day. And it's not necessarily right. And there's great opportunities out there. And I think that's one of the things, I have a bit of a reputation for not going back to camp for lunch, and often gets me in trouble with Dixon. But, the Mara is one of those places that you can spend time. And I think it's a bucket list experience for so many people. And, I always say we're there for a good time, not a long time. And so you maximize your time out in the field. And even in the middle of the day, there are some fantastic photographic opportunities to be had, especially when you've got guides alongside you coaching you and saying, well, try this, maybe overexpose, and let's look at a high-key black and white image.
Exactly, and that's what I really like about the camp, that we can stay out in the field as long as we want, and if we want to skip lunch, we can do that. It's not like in the most lodges where you have a game drive in the morning, and then you are going back for a late breakfast and for lunch, and then you are going out maybe at 3 or 3:30. But there's a lot of time you spend in the lodge doing nothing. And I definitely like to be out in the field as much as possible.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, like I say, you're there for a good time, not a long time. Silke, I can remember this morning very well.
Yeah.
This was probably one of the most spectacular crossings in terms of light and photographic opportunities that I've ever seen in the Mara.
Yeah, that was 2016 as well, and it was lookout. So with these steep entry areas where the wildebeest more or less jump into the water, and it's still one of my favorite images.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I remember that. It was an incredible crossing. And again, we hadn't moved to the site that we were at now, but this was literally 5 minutes from camp.
Exactly.
Oh, come on.
That was 2020, the year when the Mara was almost empty. That was a big advantage when we were there. It was just us and maybe a handful of cars, basically professional filmmakers or photographers. And even at Serena, it was, I think, 25% booked. And most of the other guests have been there for the weekend and left during the week. So we had the entire Mara for our own. And one morning we saw this leopard along this drainage line where they usually are. I think you know this area where all these trees, where you always see the leopards.
I know it well, but gee whiz, the light and the deep shadows and the contrasts and a beautiful pink nose. I was suggesting it's quite a young cat. Beautiful shot. I really like it, and I think something that we've worked on in the field together is showcasing the animal in its environment. And I think in days gone by, you would have gone right in on this and maybe not included as much of the environment as you have in this one. So a beautiful shot. I remember this down on the border to the Tanzania section on the Serengeti. And it gives us such a great sense of space and scale, Silke. And we've just gone from one image which is filled with vegetation to another which is completely, wide open, big open expanses, skies, and these beautiful balanite trees down on the Tanzanian border. Beautiful.
That's pure Africa.
Quite right. I tend to agree with you. Let's have a look at what we've got next here. I remember this, and this is in a spot which I like to refer to as like it's a bit of a treasure chest, that area. And I think almost every time we've gone through there, we've found something quite special, haven't we?
Yeah, and that is the area where we also saw this swimming rock python.
Yep.
And we had these
the paradise flycatchers. Yeah.
Paradise flycatchers. We had these tiny little malachite kingfishers.
Yeah.
And that's a really special area. This area.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, last year we weren't able to go there. I think it was too wet to drive there.
Yeah, I can understand that. Oh, speaking of being wet. So, these kind of shots, everyone sees this sort of shot and says, oh, I'd love to capture that. Just, tell us a little bit about what you actually had to do to get this, how much time and, and the benefit of having a vehicle with a roof. Because obviously you were pretty dry, I would imagine.
We were pretty dry and we spent a while with these. These have been two cheetah brothers. They were hunting. They caught a wildebeest, I think a young wildebeest. So we saw them feeding. And while they were feeding on the wildebeest, it starts raining. And when they started finishing with their meal or take a little break, then this one shake off the water, and I got the shot.
You certainly did. It's a great shot. I love the color and the sort of intensity and the contrast of those water droplets against the background. Bit of blood on the face. It's a real dream photograph. Lovely stuff. I remember this as well, also up near that little section. And just one of the things, again, late afternoon, playing around with compositions. You've got the time to spend out in the field and just trying different photographs and different shots. And having two of our guides there cycle through the vehicle, you're getting exposure to different photographic techniques all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely, that's true. And especially giraffe. I think they are pretty complicated to get really nice images of them.
I agree.
So this is one of the giraffe images I have, which I really like. In many cases, they look a little bit weird because you just get apart from those landscape images where you have a giraffe on the horizon.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get closer to them, I think it's really hard to get good images.
A great play on depth of field. And it's also interesting, so far, only one crossing image in your favorites, eh?
Yeah, that's true.
Late afternoon, I remember this beautiful girl, also very close to camp. Love that soft background. And again, anything on a mound, so you can see she was slightly elevated here, which means that background just falls away into the back of the frame, which is beautiful.
I like her looking up in the stars.
What's going on here? This is intense.
Yeah, that was intense. Actually, we almost missed her because that was 2020, and we were already heading back to camp because Jimmy didn't feel that good. So we thought it would be better to go back. And on the way to the camp, we saw her more or less next to the road, and she was stalking, I think, some zebbies or something. She wasn't successful, but since we have been so close, we really got her in a
Unbelievable.
good position. It was amazing to see every muscle.
Yeah. And lovely, lovely light in those eyes as well. It almost looks like she's lactating. So, I mean, that's something else around the Mara. We've seen so many little cubs. Ooh.
You remember that?
I remember this. And so, just for you guys watching, you know, if there's a quiet afternoon in the Mara, on the rare occasion, and there's really not a hell of a lot happening, the kind of the fail-safe is to drive along the edge of the Mara River and start to look for these little bee eaters, and invariably something else pops up. It's also a very good area for leopard. But we've spent quite a bit of time trying to photograph these bee eaters with slow shutter speeds, fast shutter speeds, and I mean, it's really good fun. And before you know it, an entire afternoon has gone by, Silke.
I think we spent 4 hours on these bee eaters. I think at the end I had 1,000 images, and I think 800 of them have been empty.
Beautiful. But again, diversity, you know, you go to the Masai Mara, it's big cats and crossings, but here we go with some diversity. I love it. Another shot of Scar. This was that same afternoon, a little bit of rain,
Exactly.
when he'd just been chased by the buffalo, and you can actually see the limp there. You can see his leg into the middle. He is a magnificent male. Hey?
Chased by buffalo. Do you remember that the rangers said that the day before, the evening before, they just literally drove in between the buffaloes and Scar just to save him
Yeah,
from getting killed by the buffaloes?
I do remember it, sure. Beautiful shot. Love the sense of scale. Again, pulling back to showcase the environment and the leading lines. And these are the channels that these animals come down to cross.
That's the peninsula.
Yeah. And this particular location for me is one of the most photogenic of the crossing points. And again, very, very close to camp. So often in the late afternoon and early morning, we get crossings all to ourselves there.
Yeah.
Same area at Peninsula.
Yeah.
Love the contrast of that zebra just standing there, and you can see the dust, obviously, maybe looking back, maybe it's a crocodile that had actually disturbed them and was kind of making them a bit uneasy to cross at this point.
Yeah, that's true. And that was actually the last one to just run away, because all the others already left the scene. And I think it was due to the crocodiles.
I love this as well. Lovely high key, black and white. Beautiful. And that is the selection of images. So, I mean, it's just what strikes me again is the kind of the diversity that you have, because people tend to think, you know, the Masai Mara and the Great Migration, it's all just crossings, but it really isn't. There's so much more. And often, you know, if we were to script the best week in the Mara, you get in, and within those first 3 days, there's a lot of activity around the river. You get the crossings, you see some dramatic crossings, a bit of dust here, a bit of action. And then you almost want those wildebeest to disappear from the banks of the river so that you can actually start to explore a bit further afield, because there's so many interesting corners of the Mara to be explored.
Well, that's exactly right. After this year where we had these 20 crossings in 2020, when I was back home, and I think in total I had almost 20,000 images. And after that trip I thought, well, it would have been good if we just would have 10 crossings and would have time to do something else. 18,000 of these 20,000 images were just wildebeest. As you said, there's so much more to see in the Mara, and you have to be careful not to get stuck at the crossings.
Yeah.
Although it's also nice if you have been there for more than one time, then it's and if you have already seen crossings, then you are more relaxed in terms of whether you have a crossing or not, because you know how it happens. It's okay if you see them, but if there's something else, it doesn't matter.
Excellent. So, Silke, just to kind of land this, I'm going to ask you, and I'll put you on the spot here, your 3 most favorite aspects or elements of the Wild Eye Camp? Go.
The camp stuff, definitely. First of all, the camp stuff. The location of the camp, very close to the hotspots. And
Pascal's curry, does that feature anywhere in the list?
yes, definitely, and the chili on the side.
And the chili on the side. Lovely stuff. Silke, thank you so much for connecting. And yeah, I mean, we've shared many experiences together. I appreciate you sharing what your time and your experiences in the Mara have been, and look forward to catching up with you on safari again soon.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day and hope to see you soon on the Mara.
All right. Cheers, Silke. Bye.